Last Christmas Eve, my parents dragged me out to the mall along with my little sister. Early on in the night, I got bored and knew I wouldn't be able to stand shopping for clothes any longer. I convinced my parents to let me go explore the rest of the mall while they got presents for me and my sister. But of course, in typical fashion, they only agreed to it if I took my little sister along with me. I agreed and promised that I would call as soon as we were ready to leave and meet up at the Foot Locker. We walked around for a little while, but there was still nothing that piqued my interest. My sister, however, really wanted to see Santa. Not that she believed in him really, but she thought the concept of Santa was funny for some reason. Anyways, we got lined up in the center of the mall where they had a bunch of fake North Pole scenery put up around a Christmassy house that was supposed to be Santa's cabin or whatever. Nobody could actually see Santa because you had to go inside the cabin to meet him and get your pictures. Because we couldn't see, we had no idea why it was taking so long for the line to move. With 20 or 30 people ahead of us, the estimated wait time was almost an hour, but it's where my sister wanted to go, and I didn't have any better idea, so we stuck it out. Unfortunately, after about a half an hour, the soda that I'd had at the food court was hitting my bladder. I really had to take a leak, so I told my sister to go on without me or to hold my place in line if she was still waiting when I got back. Then I raced off to the nearest restroom. Just a few minutes later, I was done, and I went back to the Santa setup to see that my sister was no longer in line. I figured she was inside the cabin, but after I saw a few people go out and no sign of her, I got confused and decided I should check inside. I tried to tell them what happened, but those heartless helper elves didn't care at all. I pleaded with them to just let me check, saying that I didn't want to take any pictures and just wanted to make sure my sister was okay. But they didn't believe me. They just wrinkled their noses and told me to get in the back of the line. Not knowing what else to do, I did. And everybody in the line gave me weird looks while I walked back. I was even more annoyed when I saw that the line had doubled in size since I left it. I was fuming the whole time I waited, mad at myself for leaving the line and cursing out everything in my head. My sister didn't have a cell phone, so she was basically helpless without me. I was responsible for her, and if I didn't get her back, I was going to be in some deep trouble with my parents. So I waited, and waited, and waited, until finally, after a ridiculous amount of time, I got in. As soon as I stepped in, a chill ran down my spine. It was super dark in there, and it smelled kind of funny. To my left was the Santa, but I've never seen such a wrong guy to play the part. He was all scrawny and ghoulish with sunken-in eyes and a patchy beard. The only part of him that was fat was his ginormous beer gut, which was way out of proportion with the rest of him. He was hideous. I couldn't tell if he was trying to do a Christmas or Halloween thing, but I'd come all the way, so I had to try talking to him. Hello? Have you seen a little girl with dark hair about this high? Probably laughed at you instead of asking for presents?
Whoa there, kiddo. Aren't you gonna ask for presents?
No, I don't care about presents. I'm just looking for my sister. This is the last place she was at. Have you seen her?
Oh, come on. I won't be cheesy like all the other Santas. You don't have to sit in my lap or anything. You just have to pick one of these 3 presents here.
The presents were laying in his lap. A blue one on the left, a green one on the right, and a red one in the middle. I hadn't noticed them before because, well, who wants to look at the crotch of somebody who looks like that?
Not sure? I'll tell you what. If you let Santa do his job, Santa will help you do yours.
You mean you'll help me find my sister?
Of course!
Well, all right then. Merry Christmas, I guess.
That's the spirit. Come here and take your pick. I'll give you a hint. I really recommend picking the red one.
I looked him up and down suspiciously. I wasn't a complete moron. I knew what he might be trying to do, but I wasn't sure. In spite of him, I pointed to the blue one.
Raw! 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 Raw!
He screamed, picked up the present, and hurled it against the wall. A bunch of Christmas chocolates exploded from it and it went everywhere.
Hey, what are you doing? I'm telling you to pick the red one.
No, I picked the green one.
You just think you're hot stuff, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, you little snaggletooth twink. I eat punks like you for a living. Is that what you want? Huh? For me to turn you into next year's chocolate?
Dude, what are you even saying?
Don't play dumb with me. Just pick the red one already. Come on, you want to find your little sister, don't you?
Fine, I picked the red one. He took the lid off the box, but I couldn't see what was inside it. The demented Santa waved his hand for me to come closer, and I did so with extreme caution. I peeked my head over and saw that it was full of candy canes, all different shapes, colors, and sizes.
Like what you see? Go ahead. Grab the biggest candy cane you can find and eat it.
Oh God, why am I doing this? I put my hand inside the box and fished around for a few seconds. I couldn't feel anything that seemed obviously bigger than everything else, until something at the bottom of the box was wrong. Really wrong. I jerked my hand out of the box and jumped back. I was about to curse out the Santa, but when I saw him again, I was speechless. He had completely unhinged his jaw and was laughing at me like a psychotic inhuman demon. I began to exit the cabin when the psychotic Santa lunged up from his seat, sprinted across the room, and cornered me against the wall. That's when the Santa pressed his demented face against mine and handed over the red box, saying,
Merry Christmas. And make sure you eat the biggest candy cane last.
Instinct took over and I broke away at the last second, sprinting through the exit. That's when I found my sister, huddled up against the wall by herself eating a candy cane. I slapped it out of her hand, grabbed her by the arm, and took us back to our parents. When we finally reached the Foot Locker, I asked her, "What were you doing in there while I was in the bathroom?"
Nothing. I was just eating a candy cane that Santa gave me while I was waiting for you.
I was really freaking out and had to call my parents right away. They raced over to us and I told them everything. They immediately called the cops, and a few minutes later, that sicko was in handcuffs, despite him being locked away. It won't ever change what happened. This is the image of the quote-unquote candy cane Santa. He was a 63-year-old Arkansas native who worked as a mall Santa at a local plaza and was arrested for his heinous crimes. The minimum sentence of his charge was 18 days, or a maximum sentence of 1,587 years. I think it's safe to say he'll be sharing candy canes in prison going forward.
This story was told from the perspective of a female girl. It happened a few years ago around the Christmas holiday. There was this little girl living in a small house with her parents, and since Christmas Day was approaching quickly, her father began setting up the tree while her mom took care of the Christmas ornaments. The little girl was so ecstatic that it was difficult to contain herself. As the little girl's parents continued to decorate the tree, the girl would chew on her nails while twitching her head to the side like some deranged crackhead. The parents would immediately take notice and began escorting her to her bedroom. The next day, the parents were in the living room, drinking some coffee while watching television. The entire house, including the tree, was completely decorated. That's when the little girl could be seen sprinting down the stairs and towards the Christmas tree, only to be left standing in front of the tree. Her parents were left confused, as the little girl's demeanor, which was once filled with excitement and anticipation, instantly turned to nothing when she saw that under the Christmas tree was merely a carpet with no presents. Unable to contain her disappointment, she asked,
"Mom, Dad, where are the presents?"
They both looked at each other and smiled, as if her concerns didn't matter. Then, moments later, her mom crouched, patted her head, and said,
"You have to wait till Christmas, dear. Santa only arrives on Christmas Day."
The girl then started slamming her fist towards the mother, as both parents had to physically restrain the girl and bring her into the bedroom. It quickly became quite evident on how desperate the girl was to get her hands on those gifts that she fantasized about daily. On Christmas Eve, her parents suggested that she should prepare some cookies and milk. When she asked why, her dad told her that Santa only gives delightful gifts to children that offer him treats. Hence, that's precisely what the girl did. The girl grabbed a batch of cookies and carton of milk and left it on the table accompanied by her mother. The parents figured that they would sneak some presents underneath the tree before the girl would awake the next day. Then, in the middle of the night, everyone went to sleep except for that girl. Her zeal and impatience was so overwhelming that she couldn't hit the hay. Moments later, after hours of flip-flopping around in bed, she heard noises downstairs. The girl immediately got up as she assumed Santa had arrived downstairs. She then snuck out the door to avoid waking up her parents. Shortly after, as she cautiously made her way down the stairs, she slowly became more anxious, capturing sounds like munching and slurping in the living room. The girl then tiptoed her way down the bottom of the steps and saw the most gut-wrenching sight a kid could ever witness. There she was, greeted by a large, ghoulish-looking Santa. He was facing the Christmas tree while munching on the cookies and slurping on the milk carton like a rotten pig. At this point, she wanted to head back upstairs and hide under the bed. However, a combination of fear and curiosity kept her in place. Thus, the girl asked,
Santa? Is that you?
There was no response, and while he remained silent, he put down the carton, slowly turning his head 180 degrees, with a sinister grin revealing sharp teeth and a wet lower lip caused by constant drooling. At first, he just stood there, staring at the little girl as she trembled in fear. Suddenly, the creepy man said,
What's the matter? Cat got your tongue, little girl?
Quivering still, the poor girl stuttered.
You're not Santa?
How rude. That's not how you greet Santa. I believe you've been a bad girl.
He licked his mouth as he tilted his head to one side and said,
Do you know what happens to bad little girls?
The girl inched back, her eyes widening, waking from her semi-stupor.
You're on my naughty list,
he said, in a pitch much lower than before. So, convinced his intentions were much worse than the girl ever anticipated, she cowered away in fear. Then, without time to think, the creepy man went on all fours, briskly walking towards her in a spider-like fashion, with his head still at 180 degrees.
Stay away from me! Mom! Dad! Help me!
Like a rabbit pursued by a snake, the girl made a run for it, but was immediately cornered.
Look at me.
The man's creepy voice lingered in the air, and when she failed to listen, he repeatedly said,
Look at me! Look at me! Look at me!
Unable to run away, she froze in fear once again. Then, moments later, as the creep's head gradually turned to the right, the girl's head also began to turn like she didn't have a will of her own, and was now under the control of this man who was employing some kind of spell. Santa's head kept turning more and more to the right, causing the unfortunate little soul to holler out loud. And oddly enough, her screams couldn't reach her parents. Instead, they were sound asleep, dreaming of their daughter opening her presents, unaware of the horrors that had pinned her down. Then suddenly, the screams vanished, and the girl's head was upside down permanently at this point, her mouth and eyes wide open. Santa's head was in the same position, as he then smiled like a deranged ghoul out of hell.
Merry Christmas!
However, the entity wanted more, and so he made another rotation, this time at 360 degrees, bringing the girl's head back to its original position. As morning came, both parents were so excited to see their daughter that they knocked on her door, only to receive no response. So, they assumed she was still asleep. However, when they opened the door, they saw that her bed was empty. Thinking she was downstairs by the Christmas tree, the parents called out her name as they descended the stairs. As they finally entered the living room, both were speechless and utterly terrified by what they witnessed. They saw the head of the girl on top of the Christmas tree. By the carpet was her limbs wrapped with wrapping paper. There lied a note next to it, saying,
Santa will return next Christmas!
There's been something I've been needing to talk about for a few years now. It was back in my second year of college. During my last semester at the university I started at before I transferred, for reasons that will become obvious. It was wintertime then, snowing constantly. I always say the reason I transferred is because transportation was a huge drag, and it was, but that's not the full reason. The buses were late all the time, and on the cold days when nobody wanted to walk, they were so jam-packed that there wasn't even a space for me to stand by the time it got to my stop. So I went went about finding a different way to get there, but since I couldn't afford a car or even a bike, I had to walk, which meant I had to find a shortcut. I did find one, but it wasn't perfect. It was a trail that cut through the woods between the campus and my apartment, and it cut a good chunk of time off of my route. The only problem was that it passed by this old abandoned cabin. Well, it was abandoned, but it did have an occupant. It was some deranged old hobo guy who took shelter in it when it was cold. There were legends about him at the school. We called him Santa because he apparently only wore an old Santa suit that he must have stolen from the mall years ago. It was alleged that he always had these reindeer in the cabin with him. I figured he was some kind of animal whisperer, like they were his friends or something, because he was too much of an outcast to have human friends. If he was just there, it wouldn't have been a problem, but he lived off the people that passed by on the trail. Whenever he saw someone, he'd charge them $1. It was like the toll for taking the shortcut, and for those who didn't pay the toll would end up on the naughty list. The guy was a real menace too. The only word he could speak was dollar. But other than that, he just screamed and grunted. Obviously, this was a terrible thing to have to go through just to get to class, but I gave the bus several chances, and it was honestly worse, even for as terrifying as the shortcut was. I put up with it, and always had $2 in my pocket, one for each way. But one day, as I was passing by his house and walking up to it, because I never tried to sneak by out of the fear that he would chase me, I noticed that there were a ton of flies coming out of it. The whole thing reeked of crap. I held my breath and knocked on the door with my dollar in my hand. And right away, the freak poked his head out through the gaps in the broken door, glaring at me with the most disturbing expression ever.
Dollar.
He then reached out his crusty old hand and grabbed my wrist, pulling me in closer to him.
Dollar, dollar, dollar.
I closed my eyes reflexively and he shook my wrist until I let go of the dollar and yanked my hand back as he reached down to grab it. I ran away shouting and cursing him, totally about to piss myself. That same day when I sat down for lunch with one of my friends, I told him about what happened. He never believed in the dirty Santa legend though, and he seriously thought I was messing with him. I'm being for real, man. There's a dirty hobo dressed like Santa on the shortcut. He's crazy. Dude, you're crazy. I've walked that trail and I didn't see anybody in that cabin because you walked it in the spring. Santa only comes during the winter. Do you hear yourself right now? Talking about Santa Claus like you still believe in him in your 20s. He's scary, man. You better not go down that trail without a couple bucks in your pocket. Or what? He'll put me on the naughty list? Yes, he will. You don't want that. Well, thanks for the warning, chicken shit, but I'm too broke to be scared out of my cash by some dirty hobo in the woods. I really did everything I could try to make him take it seriously, but he wouldn't listen to me. I was just hoping that I was being more scared than I needed to be, and that some of the legends I heard weren't completely true. I had to stick around for another class, but my friend was done for the day and went home right after lunch. I waved goodbye to him after I reminded him where the trail was, and I made sure he had $1, but I already knew he would want to keep it for himself. When I was finally free, I walked through the shortcut a little faster than normal. My heart sank when I saw a thick trail of blood on the trail, leading right up to the cabin. My hand was shaking, but I walked up to pay my toll anyway, hoping that he had just hunted down some wild game in the forest or something. I knocked on the door and stuck my hand out with $1 clutched in it, averting my eyes until nothing happened. Hello? Anyone home? When there was no answer, I slowly pushed the door open, getting my first good look at the interior of the cabin. I realized then that all those reindeer I'd been seeing weren't actually real alive reindeer, but taxidermy fakes. There were dismembered deer parts everywhere, and heads up on the wall like trophies. And then, right next to them, the head of my friend looking right at the door. And that dirty Santa wannabe maniac was just sitting by the fire pit, laughing. His mouth was caked in blood, but he couldn't have looked more pleased with himself. I dropped my dollar, ran away, and didn't look back. It was in the middle of the day when I got home, but I crawled into bed and pulled the sheets over my face and tried to block out the world, suppress the memory of everything that I'd just seen, and forget about the whole thing like it was all just some terrible, awful nightmare. I couldn't even do that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my friend's head decapitated and hung up on the wall like it was a hunting trophy. So I didn't close my eyes. I kept them open all day and all night, trying to not even blink. My neighbors found out I was going insane by the second day of that, and I used it as an excuse to blame my bad mental health on the university and get transferred. I ended up changing my major completely and taking some courses abroad, just to get as far away from that school as possible. I never wanted to take that trail again. I didn't even want to think about it, but as much as I don't want to do it, I do still remember it every day. My friend was eventually reported as a missing person, but I don't even know if they ever found him. I'm not sure what even became of the dirty cabin Santa, or if people still have to pay the toll to walk that trail. Of course, I regret never saying a word about all of this until now, but at least I finally got it off my chest.